In this module, we will learn the inputs, tools and techniques, and outputs of the Determine Budget process. Determine Budget is the process of taking the individual cost estimates and working with key stakeholders to generate an overall project budget and cost baseline. The Determine Budget process includes several inputs from other planning processes. First, the cost management plan should describe how this process should be performed. This considers the uniqueness of the project environment to define who should be involved, which tools and techniques will be utilized, the way results should be documented, and the way in which the process may be iterated. Since we will be determining the cost of all of the work, the scope baseline will be an input. More importantly, the key inputs are the cost estimates and the basis of estimates, which together represent the estimated costs attributed to each individual schedule activity, as well as the justification and assumptions behind those estimates. Part of determining the budget will involve understanding when the costs are budgeted to be spent. Therefore, the project schedule representing when the activities will occur will be an input. Determining the budget involves managing uncertainties that exist in the project environment, so the risk register will also be an input to this process. Another input to this process is agreements. Agreements are an output from Chapter 12 on procurement management, representing contracts that have been reached with vendors or subcontractors. Once the agreement is signed, the costs can be better accounted for in the budget. There are two key tools and techniques for the Determine Budget process. Cost aggregation is simply taking all of the individual activity cost estimates and adding them together for each top-level summary. This is done to determine an overall cost estimate for the entire project. Funding limit reconciliation is a technique involving negotiation between the project management team and other project stakeholders. The goal is to reach a project budget that all parties can agree to as being achievable and acceptable by funders such as the sponsor. This may require some back and forth and compromise between the various parties. In addition to agreeing to the grand total budget, they will also have to agree to the timeliness of funding. It is important that work is not scheduled to occur faster than the funds have been planned to be released into the project. Other tools and techniques include expert judgment, historical relationships, and reserve analysis. The agreement to a project budget will require the experience and expertise of the project funder, project manager, and possibly other team members such as a cost controller. They may utilize historical information review to base aspects of the project budget off of past projects. Reserve analysis is a technique used to counteract risk by adding a buffer into the cost estimate. In this process, management reserves can be added to the project or phase level based on unidentified risks. Since these can be difficult to estimate, some projects may utilize a percentage, such as plus 10%, to anticipate these unidentified risks. Financing includes acquiring resources to fund the project. The project team may play a role in this process, especially to ensure external funders' requirements are fulfilled. The PMBOK guide describes two key outputs to the Determine Budget process. First and foremost is the cost baseline. The cost baseline is an approved time-phase spending plan for how much and when project assets are authorized to be spent. Approval is typically required by key project stakeholders such as the project sponsor, the project manager, the cost controller, and in some cases, the customer. Once approved, the cost baselines help to guide all project execution and serves as a reference point for all cost performance measurement. This may inherently include contingency reserves that have been allocated to identified risks at the activity level. However, this may not represent the total budget if management reserves exist. The total project budget is represented by a second output, the project funding requirements. The project funding requirements are the total funds that should be allocated to the project, including the cost baseline, plus any management reserves that have been allocated for unidentified risks outside of the baseline. Since the relationship between the estimates, the baseline, and the budget can be confusing, let's do a quick review. In the estimate costs process, the resource costs of each individual schedule activity are estimated and documented. These estimates may include some contingency reserve representing additional funds allocated because of identified risks, sometimes referred to as known unknowns. In the determine budget process, these estimates are aggregated and approved, resulting in a cost baseline. The project stakeholders may choose to allocate additional funds to the project to cover possible unidentified risks, known as management reserve. Unidentified risks are sometimes referred to as unknown unknowns. These funds are not part of the cost baseline, but are considered to be part of the project budget. If an unknown risk event occurs, an approved change request will be required to add this money to the baseline. Finally, many processes may lead to updates to project documents, such as the risk register or activity attributes. Since project documents are not subject to the same levels of approval that baselines are, these updates will not require formal change control. However, to ensure best practices of proper versioning, access control, and notification, it is important that the configuration management plan is followed. The determine budget process can be thought of as the grand finale of cost planning. It brings together an understanding of project work, schedule, and resource needs to create a formal approved plan for project costs. The cost baseline includes a time phase spending plan for all of the project work. This baseline is considered to be part of the project management plan and will be used as an input to many other project planning processes. It will also be used to guide the execution of project work and will provide a reference point for performance measurement during monitoring and controlling. Once established, the baseline can only be changed through formal change control.